The lights came on slowly, one by one. In the massive underground facility, beneath what used to be called Colorado, Dr. Sarah Chen felt the warming sensation spread through her body as the hibernation pod released its hold on her. Her lungs expanded with the first real breath in 10,000 years. The process took an hour. Sarah's mind gradually cleared from the fog of deep sleep. She remembered everything. The sun had been dying, throwing off massive bursts of radiation that would sterilize Earth's surface for centuries. Humanity had made a choice. They would sleep through the storm and wake when it was safe to return. Around her, other pods were opening. Scientists, engineers, doctors, and leaders were waking up in facilities across the solar system. Sarah checked her neural display. The date made her dizzy. They had slept for 10,247 years. Status report, she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. The facility's artificial intelligence responded immediately. Welcome back, Dr. Chen. All primary systems functional. Radiation levels normal. Earth's biosphere has recovered to pre-crisis levels. Solar activity stable. Sarah pulled herself from the pod, her muscles weak but functional. The hibernation technology had worked perfectly. She was the first human to wake by design. As chief science officer, she needed to assess the situation before others joined her. She walked through the facility on shaking legs, each step growing stronger. The air had maintained everything. The air was fresh. The systems hummed with power. Gardens grown by automated systems provided food. It was miraculous, but something felt wrong. AI, show me external sensors. What's happening? Outside, the screens lit up with data that made Sarah's breath catch. The solar system was full of activity, not human activity. The sensors detected thousands of ships, hundreds of stations, and dozens of settlements throughout the outer system. Energy signatures she didn't recognize, communication patterns in languages Earth's computers couldn't translate. Unknown contacts, the AI reported. Calmly, they began appearing. Approximately 8,000 years ago, they have established permanent presence in the Kuiper Belt, asteroid belt, and Jupiter system. Multiple attempts to approach Earth were deterred by automated defense systems as programmed. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up more data. The outer system was crawling with alien civilizations. They had built entire cities on objects humanity had barely begun to explore before the sleep, and they seemed to treat the Sol system like it belonged to them. Over the next week, more humans woke. Admiral Marcus Kim emerged from the Mars facility, bringing military expertise. Governor Yuki Tanaka woke on Luna Base. Her administrative skills immediately needed. Chief Engineer David Okonkwo activated from the orbital station. His knowledge of the defense systems critical. They held their first council meeting virtually, each leader appearing as a hologram in the main command center. Sarah had established, "This is worse than we thought," Admiral Kim said, his face grim. "I've reviewed the defense logs. These aliens have been testing our boundaries for millennia. They've cataloged our weapons, they've studied our warning beacons, and they've concluded we're no threat." Yuki pulled up a translation the AI had finally managed. "Look at this. It's from something called the Galactic Council. They refer to our automated systems as the Silent Sentinels. They think we're extinct. They've turned our home into an Archaeological site, David's hologram. Showed footage from external cameras. Alien ships moved freely through the outer system, some were mining. Asteroids, others appeared to be tourists. Vessels taking visitors on trips to view Earth from orbit. One advertisement the AI had intercepted promised a glimpse of the mysterious extinct human civilization. They're treating us like a museum, Sarah said quietly, like we're already dead. Admiral Kim pulled up tactical data. The good news is our defenses worked. Every warning beacon is still active. Every satellite is still functional. The automated systems have kept them away from Earth, Mars, and our major facilities. But they don't seem to understand what those warnings mean. What do they warnings say? Yuki asked. Sarah brought up the original messages humanity had programmed before going to sleep. Words were clear and direct. This system is temporarily unoccupied. Its inhabitants will return. Do not colonize. Do not extract resources. Do not interfere. This is not a request. They ignored us. David said 10,000 years of warnings, and they just ignored us. Admiral Kim leaned forward. Because they don't think we're coming back. As far as they're concerned, we left forever. They've created laws, established territories, and built entire settlements. In their eyes, they own this system now. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. This was humanity's home. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid had been mapped and named by human explorers. Her ancestors had died to protect this system. They had built weapons to defend it, and they had willingly gone to sleep rather than abandon Earth to die alone. Now, strangers lived here, strangers who thought humans were extinct. We have two choices, Admiral Kim said. We can contact them peacefully and negotiate, or we can remind them why we put those warnings in place. We should try diplomacy first, Sarah argued. We don't know their intentions. Maybe they'll leave peacefully. David shook his head. I've analyzed their mining operations. They've extracted billions of tons of resources from our asteroids. They've established permanent habitats on our moons. They're not going to just pack up and leave because we ask nicely. Yuki looked at each of them. What if we show them we're back, give them a demonstration they can't ignore? Admiral Kim smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. I was hoping someone would suggest that our ancestors built weapons that could defend against threats they couldn't even imagine. These aliens think our defenses are primitive. Let's show them what primitive human technology can actually do. Sarah wanted to protest, but she couldn't. She had seen the footage of alien tourists taking pictures of Earth like it was an abandoned monument. She had read their research papers discussing the extinct human species with casual academic interest. She had watched them ignore warning after warning. How long do we give them? She asked. 72 hours, Admiral Kim replied. We wake everyone else. We bring all systems online. We send one message in their languages, and we give them 3 days to leave our home. And if they don't, Yuki asked. Admiral Kim's expression hardened. Then they learn what happens when you wake a species that went asleep. Surrounded by weapons, they'll learn that humans didn't put warnings on their door because they were afraid of visitors. We put them there because we knew exactly what we'd do to anyone who didn't listen. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would announce its return. Galaxy had forgotten what humans were capable of. It was time to remember. Coordinator Thresh adjusted the sensors. For the 100th time that morning, the Valeth scientist had dedicated 40 years to studying the silent sentinels of the Sol system. To most of the galaxy, they were just ancient defense satellites from a dead civilization. To Thresh, they were beautiful mysteries. The research station floated at the edge of the system, a safe distance from the automated defenses. Galactic Council regulations required all research facilities to maintain that distance. The silent sentinels had destroyed 3 ships over the centuries. When they ventured too close to the inner planets, nobody wanted to be the 4th. Coordinator, the supply ship is arriving, his assistant Mira announced. Thresh looked up from his instruments. The young Korathi pilot named Vesa was. Early this week, she usually brought interesting news from the inner settlements along with their supplies. Vesa's ship docked smoothly. She entered the station with her usual cheerful energy, pushing containers of food and equipment, but today her expression seemed worried. Something wrong? Thresh asked. Vesa hesitated. Maybe nothing, but I've been hearing strange reports from the inner system. Power fluctuations near Mars, unusual energy readings from Earth's surface. Some of the mining crews in the asteroid belt say the old human satellites are acting different. Thresh waved a hand dismissively. The systems are 10,000 years old. Of course they're breaking down. It's remarkable they've lasted this long. My grandmother used to say something, Vesa said quietly. She studied extinct species. She always told me, never trust a species' defenses to stay quiet forever. If they built it to last, they meant to come back. Thresh laughed. Bubbling sound natural to Vale. That's ancient superstition. Vesa, no species can survive 10,000 years of hibernation. The biological requirements alone would be impossible. The humans are gone. They died in whatever catastrophe struck their star, but Vesa didn't look convinced. She unloaded the supplies quickly and left, her ship accelerating away faster than usual. Thresh returned to his research. The humans had been fascinating. The archaeological evidence painted a picture of a violent species that somehow achieved cooperation. They had created weapons capable of destroying their own planet, then made laws to never use them. They had reached their moon before they even unified their governments. They had been chaotic, creative, and contradictory. The silent sentinels were perfect examples of human engineering. Simple, robust, and surprisingly effective. Each satellite carried kinetic weapons, basic energy shields, and rudimentary artificial intelligence. Nothing compared to modern galactic technology, but impressive for such a young species. Thresh pulled up reports from other parts of the Sol system. The Mandari mining collective was expanding operations on Mars moons. The profits were enormous. Human mining techniques had been primitive, leaving vast resources untouched. The Zentury tourism company was advertising new packages. Visit the birthplace of humanity. See Earth's preserved cities. Walk where the ancients walked. Tickets were selling well. Many species found humans interesting despite their extinction. Academic institutions had established observation posts around the system. Universities studied the human question, how such a violent species had managed to reach space without destroying themselves first. The prevailing theory was that they hadn't. Something had destroyed them. Probably their own weapons, Thresh's communicator chimed. It was a message from Galactic Council headquarters. They were approving expanded operations in the Sol system, more mining rights, more tourism permits. The system was becoming quite profitable. Coordinator Thresh, you're authorized to establish closer observation posts. The silent sentinels have not shown hostile action in over 200 years. The Council believes they are finally degrading. We are reducing the restricted zones. Thresh felt excited. Closer access meant better research. He could finally study the satellites up close, maybe even recover one for detailed analysis. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. He began making plans immediately. The research station would move inward. They would establish new sensor nets. Perhaps they could even land on Earth itself and explore the human cities firsthand. The next day, Thresh held a meeting with other researchers in the system. Holographic projections showed Rendari miners, Gentry tour operators, and academic observers from a dozen species. The Council has approved expanded access. Thresh announced, this is a historic moment. We'll finally be able to study the humans in detail. Mendari supervisor named Cross spoke up. My crews have been wanting to expand to the inner asteroids for years. The mineral content is incredible. With reduced restrictions, we can triple our output, a Gentry representative added. We have customers requesting surface visits to Earth. The preserved cities would make incredible destinations. Imagine walking through an actual human settlement. Dupants, not everyone was enthusiastic. An elderly Velcrin military observer named Chorus expressed concern. The Sentinels destroyed 3 ships. They may be old, but they're still dangerous. We should maintain caution. That was centuries ago, Thresh argued. The systems are degrading. The power fluctuations Vesa mentioned are signs of system failure, not increased activity. We have nothing to fear from dead machines. The meeting ended with agreement. Operations would expand. More ships would enter the inner system. The Sol system would finally be fully integrated into galactic civilization. Over the following weeks, activity in the Sol system increased dramatically. Mining ships moved into the asteroid belt in force. Tourist vessels began offering closer flybys of Earth. Research teams prepared expeditions to the surface of Mars. Thresh moved his station closer to Earth, setting up shop near the moon. The view was spectacular. Earth hung below, blue and green and beautiful. The human home world had recovered remarkably from whatever catastrophe had struck it. The automated preservation systems had done their job well. He began detailed scans of the nearby sentinels. They were more complex than he had thought. The power systems were still active, drawing energy from sources he couldn't quite identify. The weapons were functional, though hopefully dormant. The AI systems were surprisingly sophisticated for such an old design. One evening, Vesa delivered supplies again. She looked even more worried than before. The fluctuations are getting worse, she said. My ship sensors picked up massive power surges from the inner system. Every sentinel in range is showing increased activity. Coordinator, I think we should pull back. Thresh examined the data she provided. She was right. Power levels were rising across the board, but he interpreted it differently. The systems are failing. Catastrophically. It's what happens to old technology. They surge before they die or before they wake up. Vesa said quietly, there's nothing to wake. Thresh insisted, the humans are gone. This is just old machinery breaking down. But that night Thresh couldn't sleep. He ran simulations, analyzed data, and reviewed human history. Something Vesa had said kept bothering him. Her grandmother's warning about species that meant to return. He pulled up the original human warning messages, the ones the Sentinels still broadcast on old radio frequencies. He had read them 1,000 times, but now he read them again with fresh eyes. This system is temporarily unoccupied. Its inhabitants will return. Do not colonize. Do not extract resources. Do not interfere. This is not a request. Temporarily unoccupied. Will return, not might return, not if we survive will return. Thresh felt a chill run through his body. What if the humans hadn't been warning others to stay away because they feared invasion? What if they had been warning others to stay away for their own safety? He was about to contact the council with his concerns when every alarm in his station screamed at once. His screens filled with data that made no sense. Every silent sentinel in the system had activated simultaneously. Power readings were off the scale. Weapon systems were online, and something was broadcasting from Earth's surface, a message in perfect galactic common, a language that wouldn't be invented for another 8,000 years after humans supposedly went extinct. This is Admiral Marcus Kim of the United Human Coalition. You are currently occupying the Sol system without authorization. You have 72 hours to evacuate all personnel and equipment. Failure to comply will result in defensive action. Thresh stared at the message in absolute horror. The humans weren't extinct. They had never left. They had been sleeping. And now they were awake. The message reached every alien vessel in the Sol system simultaneously. Tourist ships near Earth, mining stations in the asteroid belt, research facilities on the outer planets. Everyone heard Admiral Kim's words, translated perfectly into their own languages on the human command center. Sarah watched the reactions flood in. Panic, disbelief, confusion. Some aliens thought it was a hoax. Others began emergency evacuations. Immediately, the galaxy had forgotten humans existed, and now they were very suddenly being reminded. 72 hours. Admiral Kim repeated, standing at the tactical display. That gives them 3 days to pack up and leave peacefully. After that, we enforce our boundaries. Sarah still felt uncomfortable with the aggressive approach. Marcus, we could negotiate, establish diplomatic relations. They didn't know we were coming back. They ignored our warnings. David said from his station. Every beacon, every message, every automated response told them to stay away. They didn't care. They treated our home like abandoned property. Yuki was monitoring communications from the aliens. The Galactic Council is calling for a meeting. They want to discuss our claims to the system. They're using legal language, something about 10,000 years of absence constituting abandonment. Admiral Kim's expression hardened. Let them talk about their laws. We didn't agree to those laws. We were here first. We never left. We just went asleep, and now we're awake. Over. The next 24 hours, the situation escalated quickly. Some aliens began leaving immediately, especially the smaller operations and independent ships, but the major corporations and government facilities didn't budge. They contacted their home governments, they filed legal complaints, they demanded negotiations. The Galactic Council sent an official response. They acknowledged humanity's return but claimed the Sol system had been legally incorporated into Council jurisdiction 4,000 years ago. They offered to discuss shared governance and reparations for displacement. Sarah read the message with growing anger. They're offering us reparations for being forced from our own home. They don't see it that way, Yuki explained. In their legal framework, we abandoned the system. They settled it legally. From their perspective, we're the invaders. Admiral Kim sent a one-word response to the Council: no. As the deadline approached, the aliens showed no signs of leaving. The mining operations continued. The research station stayed in place. The tourist ships kept running their routes. They were calling humanity's bluff. They don't think we'll do anything, David observed. They've studied our weapons. They think the Sentinels are primitive. They don't believe we're a real threat. Then we show them, Admiral Kim said. Quietly, he opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. All human vessels prepare for deployment. We're going to give them a demonstration they won't forget. Sarah wanted to protest, but she saw the determination in his eyes. More importantly, she saw the anger in the eyes of every human who had woken to find strangers in their home. They had sacrificed everything to save Earth. They had slept for 10,000 years, and they had come home to find their solar system occupied. Admiral Kim activated the full defense network throughout the Sol system. Satellites that aliens had dismissed as ancient relics suddenly revealed their true capabilities. Power readings spiked to levels that dwarfed modern weapons. Targeting systems locked onto every alien vessel simultaneously. Rail guns that looked simple were actually relativistic weapons capable of accelerating projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. The human frigate Guardian decloaked between Mars and Jupiter. It had been hidden for weeks, observing the aliens while running silent. The ship was 10,000 years old, designed by engineers who knew humans might need to defend their home against unknown threats. Its reactor output alone exceeded the power of the entire Galactic Council research station. Its armor was layered with materials that aliens hadn't even invented yet. Its weapons could track thousands of targets simultaneously. It was a warship designed by a species that had studied warfare for thousands of years and knew exactly how to build something lethal. Captain Amara Oe commanded the Guardian. She was a career military officer who had gone to sleep as a young lieutenant and woken as the commander of humanity's first visible military asset in this new era. She sent a transmission to all alien vessels. This is Captain Oe of the United Human Coalition frigate Guardian. You have 71 hours and 23 minutes to evacuate the Sol system. We are not extinct. We are not primitive. We are home. Leave now or face the consequences. The aliens panicked. Ships that had been casually mining asteroids suddenly broke off and began calculations for departure. Tourist vessels abandoned their routes and headed for the outer system. Even some of the government facilities started. Evacuation procedures, but the Galactic Council refused to back down. They sent a military response. Admiral Chorus of the Velcrin fleet arrived with 200 warships representing 15 different species. They were called a peacekeeping force, but everyone knew what they really were. The Council was sending a message of its own. They weren't going to be intimidated by one species, no matter how dramatic their entrance. Chorus opened communications with Admiral Kim. The Velcrin were a proud species with a long military tradition. Chorus had fought in 3 major wars and never lost a battle. Unidentified human vessels, he transmitted. This system has been legally incorporated into Galactic Council jurisdiction for 4,000 years. We acknowledge your return and are willing to negotiate shared governance and reparations. But you must stand down your weapons and enter diplomatic talks. Admiral Kim's response was cold and clear. You have 23 hours. We do not share our home. We do not negotiate for what is already ours. Leave or be removed. Chorus felt insulted. In his experience, negotiations were always possible. Military force was just a tool to encourage better diplomatic terms. He decided to make a demonstration of his own. 3 of his most advanced warships would take up positions near Mars, showing humanity that the Council meant business. Admiral Kim, we are moving vessels into the Mars orbital zone for peacekeeping purposes. This is not an act of aggression. We are simply establishing our presence during negotiations. You were warned, Admiral Kim replied. Nothing more. The 3 Velcrin warships approached Mars. They were powerful vessels with shields that could withstand nuclear weapons, armor that could shrug off most energy, weapons and sensors that could track objects across solar systems. Their crews were experienced warriors. The human response was instantaneous. The sentinels surrounding Mars didn't fire energy weapons or missiles. Instead, they accelerated small tungsten projectiles to relativistic speeds. Projectiles moved so fast that the Velcrin sensors couldn't even detect them until they hit. The impacts released energy equivalent to massive nuclear weapons. The Velcrin shields never activated because there was nothing to shield against until the projectile had already passed through the hull. All 3 ships exploded simultaneously. Brilliant flashes visible from Earth. The entire alien fleet watched in horror. Modern military doctrine revolved around shields and energy weapons. The humans were using kinetic weapons accelerated to speeds that made shields useless. It was old technology, supposedly primitive, but it was devastatingly effective. On Vessa's ship, Coordinator Thresh finally understood. He had been evacuating with the other researchers, and now he watched the destruction on his screens. They weren't keeping others out because they were afraid, he whispered. They were keeping others out because they knew exactly how dangerous they could be. The warnings weren't for human protection, they were for everyone else's. Vessa nodded slowly. My grandmother was right. Never wake species that builds defenses to last 10,000 years. They're not planning to run away, they're planning to fight. Admiral Cora stared at his tactical display, unable to process what had just happened. He had lost 3 ships in less than a second. His fleet was the most powerful military force in several sectors, and the humans had destroyed 3 of his best vessels without any Apparent effort, all ships retreat to the Kuiper Belt boundary, he ordered. His voice shook slightly. Do not approach the inner system. Do not fire. Weapons, we are falling back to defensive positions. The Council fleet withdrew in disorder. The peacekeeping force meant Clear's throat to intimidate humanity was fleeing from weapons that were 10,000 years old. Admiral Kim broadcast. One final message. You have 22 hours and 57 minutes. The countdown continues. End. Quote, throughout the galaxy, species watched the footage of the destroyed warships. News networks analyzed the human weapons. Military experts tried to explain how such old technology could be so effective, and slowly a new understanding spread. Humanity wasn't primitive, they were experienced. They had studied war for thousands of years. They had built weapons designed to last millennia, and they had gone to sleep knowing exactly what they would do to anyone who didn't respect their warnings. The galaxy was learning a difficult lesson. Never assume a sleeping species is a dead species, and never ignore warnings from a species that understands warfare well enough to try avoiding it. The Galactic Council headquarters exploded with activity. Representatives from hundreds of species watched the footage from the Sol system over and over. 3 advanced warships destroyed in seconds. The humans hadn't even bothered with warning shots. They had simply eliminated the threat with frightening efficiency. Council leader Vaughn, a senior Mandari diplomat, called an emergency session. The chamber filled with holographic projections of representatives from across the galaxy. Everyone was talking at once. The peaceful return of an extinct species had turned into a potential war. They murdered our peacekeepers, shouted the Velcrin representative, still shaking from the shock of losing ships. They warned us, countered a Cathy delegate. Multiple times. We chose to ignore those warnings. Their warnings were 10,000 years old, Vaughn argued. How were we supposed to know? They were still valid. They abandoned the system, did they? The question came from an elderly historian named Preth. I've reviewed the original messages. They said temporarily unoccupied, and inhabitants will return. Those aren't the words of a species abandoning their home. Those are the words of a species planning to come back. Vaughn pulled up legal documents. Council law is clear. 10,000 years of absence constitutes abandonment. We have established settlements, trade routes, and resource extraction operations. We have legal rights to that system. Legal rights they don't recognize. Preth replied. They were never part of the Council. They never agreed to our laws. We created those laws while they slept and assumed they would accept them when they woke. Admiral Chorus appeared as a hologram broadcasting from his retreating fleet. We need to discuss the military situation. The human weapons are unlike anything in our current arsenal. They're using relativistic kinetics. Our shields are designed for energy weapons and missiles. They're completely ineffective against projectiles moving at that speed. A military analyst brought up tactical displays. The humans have hundreds of these weapons platforms throughout their system, each one capable of engaging multiple targets. Our estimates suggest they could destroy a fleet of several thousand ships before we could mount an effective response. The chamber fell silent. Several thousand ships. The Council had faced aggressive species before, but none with this kind of defensive capability. and these were supposedly old weapons. What could modern human technology do? We need to negotiate, Vaughn said finally. Send a diplomatic team, offer concessions. We cannot afford a war with a species this militarily capable. They don't want concessions. Cora said bitterly. I tried negotiating. They want complete evacuation. No sharing, no compromise. Just everyone out of their system, then we evacuate, said Preth simply. We made a mistake. We ignored clear warnings and settled a system that wasn't ours. Now we face the consequences. We have 4,000 years of settlement, Vor protested. Millions of citizens living in that system, trillions in economic value. We can't just abandon it. We don't have a choice, Preth replied, unless you want to send more ships to die. While the council debated, evacuations accelerated throughout the Sol system. The Rendari mining operations were packing up hastily, leaving behind equipment they couldn't move quickly enough. Gentry tourism companies canceled all flights and began refund processes. Research stations transmitted final data before beginning shutdown procedures. Vesa helped coordinate evacuations, her small ship running constantly between stations and larger transports. She encountered Coordinator Thresh on one run, helping him move the last of his research data, 40 years of work. Thresh said sadly, watching the Sol system recede behind them, all gone. You're still alive, Vesa pointed out. Unlike those 3 warship crews, my grandmother used to say that you can always gather new data, but you can't come back from death. Thresh nodded. Your grandmother was wise. I should have listened to you about the power fluctuations. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. None of us did, Vesa said. We wanted to believe the humans were gone because it made things easier. We could study their things, use their resources, explore their worlds. We didn't want to consider that they might come back angry. Are they angry? Thresh asked, or just protective? Vesa thought about that. Both, I think. Imagine going to sleep in your home and waking up to find strangers have moved in, used all your things, and declared that they own everything now because you were gone too long. As ships fled the Sol system, the human countdown continued. 20 hours, 15 hours, 10 hours. The evacuations were going well, but not everyone could leave in time. Some facilities were too large to pack up quickly. Some species moved slower than others, and some simply refused to believe the humans would actually follow through on their threat. A Mendari mining platform in the asteroid belt sent a message to the council. Their evacuation would take another week. They requested an extension of the deadline. They had families on board, civilians who had done nothing wrong. The council forwarded the request to Admiral Kim. His response was brief. You have 8 hours. Evacuate now or suffer the consequences. There will be no extensions. Sarah confronted him in the command center. Marcus, they have children on that platform. We can't just kill civilians. They have 8 hours, he repeated. That's more than enough time to get people off that platform and onto evacuation ships. If they're still there when the deadline expires, it's because they chose to stay. One, but no, but Sarah, we gave them 3 days. We gave them clear warnings. We showed them what happens when they ignore us. If we extend the deadline, it sends a message that we're not serious, that we can be manipulated. every other species will start asking for extensions. Before you know it, we'll be negotiating for years while they continue living in our home. David supported him. Sarah, I understand your concern, but the Admiral is right. We need to show strength now, or we'll be fighting this battle forever. One deadline, one response. Clear and decisive, Yuki added quietly. The platform is owned by a corporation. They could afford to send evacuation ships immediately. They're gambling that we won't actually fire on civilians. They're using those families as human shields. Sarah felt sick. The politics of this new galaxy were complicated and ruthless, but she also understood the logic. Humanity needed to establish boundaries immediately, or they would spend decades fighting for respect. The Mandari Corporation, realizing the humans weren't bluffing, finally sent emergency evacuation ships. They moved their personnel in a frantic rush, leaving behind all equipment and resources. The platform was emptied with 40 minutes to spare as the deadline approached. Admiral Kim sent one final broadcast. This is Admiral Marcus Kim. You have 10 minutes to leave the Sol system. Any vessels, stations, or personnel remaining after that time will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Sarah watched the countdown on the main display. 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 8 minutes. Ships were still fleeing, their engines pushed to maximum. As they raced for the boundary, some wouldn't make it. A few research stations had been abandoned with staff still aboard. The evacuation ships arriving too late. 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes. Admiral Yuki reported, we have 17 vessels and 3 stations inside the boundary. 2 of the vessels are having engine trouble. 1 station has 23 staff members who missed their evacuation ship. Admiral Kim's hand hovered over the weapons release. Sarah could see the struggle in his eyes. He didn't want to kill anyone, but he had made a promise, and the entire galaxy was watching. Hail those vessels and stations, he ordered. Tell them they have 3 minutes to surrender and request asylum. If they do, we'll bring them in as prisoners. If they don't, we fire. The message went out. 2 minutes remaining. The damaged vessels immediately surrendered. Grateful for the option, 1 station surrendered, but 2 stations and 1 ship refused, either not receiving the message or choosing to ignore it. 1 minute. Orders, sir. The weapons officer asked. Admiral Kim took a breath. Fire. The silent sentinels throughout the system activated simultaneously. Relativistic projectiles streak across space. The 2 stations and 1 ship disappeared in flashes of light. Quick, clean, final. The galaxy watched the execution in stunned silence. The humans had done exactly what they promised. No mercy, no exceptions. The deadline had passed and they had enforced it. On the council station, Vaughn stared at his display in shock. They actually did it. They killed those people. Prith looked at him with sad eyes. No, we killed them. We ignored their warnings. We pushed them to this. We treated their home as abandoned property. These deaths are on our hands. Vaughn, not theirs. Admiral Chorus, watching from his fleet, felt a cold understanding settle over him. He had faced many enemies in his career. Some were brutal, some were tactical, some were relentless, but he had never faced an enemy quite like humanity. They didn't want war. They had tried to avoid it with warnings and countdowns, but when pushed, they didn't hesitate. They didn't negotiate. they simply acted with overwhelming force. They're not conquerors, he said quietly to his staff. They're guardians. They'll do anything to protect their home. Anything. The Sol system fell silent, empty of alien presence for the first time in 8,000 years. The Guardian frigate patrolled the boundary, making sure everyone understood this was human space. The warnings were real and humanity was awake. 3 weeks after the deadline, Dr. Sarah Chin traveled to the neutral station established at the edge of the Sol system. The Galactic Council had requested formal negotiations. Admiral Kim had agreed, but only on humanity's terms. The meeting would happen in neutral space. No weapons, no military presence except the Guardian frigate maintaining a respectful distance. Sarah felt nervous as her shuttle approached the station. She had been chosen as humanity's diplomatic representative because of her scientific background and her more moderate views. But she carried the full authority of the human government, and everyone knew the stakes. The station was new, built hastily by the council specifically for these talks. Inside, representatives from dozens of species waited. Sarah recognized Coordinator Thresh, now serving as a historical consultant. Vesa was there too, acting as a neutral observer. Admiral Chorus represented the military perspective, and council leader Vaughn would lead the negotiations. Sarah entered the chamber and every eye turned to her. She could feel the mixture of fear, curiosity, and resentment. Some species viewed humans as victims who had rightfully reclaimed their home. Others saw them as aggressive newcomers who had murdered civilians. The truth, as always, was more complicated. Vaughn opened the proceedings. Dr. Chen, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. The council wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity and discuss the future of the Sol system. Sarah sat at the designated position, alone facing the assembled representatives. She took a breath and began. Before we discuss the future, we need to establish understanding about the past. The Sol system has always been humanity's home. 10,000 years ago, our sun became unstable. We faced a choice: abandon Earth forever, or go to sleep and trust that we could survive until conditions improved. She brought up holographic displays showing human history, the desperate preparations, the construction of hibernation facilities, the careful programming of defensive systems. We left warnings clear. Warnings. We told anyone who found our system that we would return. We asked them not to settle, not to take resources, not to interfere. Thresh spoke up. Dr. Chen, I have studied those warnings extensively, but they were 10,000 years old, broadcast in languages no one spoke, using technology no one recognized. How were we supposed to know they were still valid? Sarah's eyes hardened because they were warnings. When you find a sign that says danger, you don't assume it's safe just because the sign is old. You exercise caution. You investigate. You respect the possibility that the danger is real. She changed the display to show alien activity in the Sol system over the millennia: mining operations, tourist ships, research stations. You didn't just ignore our warnings. You cataloged them. You studied them. You knew exactly what they said, and you decided we were dead, so the warnings didn't matter anymore. Vor tried to interject, but Sarah continued, let me be clear, we understand that you didn't know we were Alive, we understand that 10,000 years is a long time. We even understand that you created laws and frameworks during our absence, but none of that changes the fundamental truth. This was our home. We never abandoned it. We just went asleep. A Velcrin military observer spoke up. You killed council personnel, 3 warships and multiple station crews. How do you justify that? Violence. Sarah's expression remained steady. We gave you 3 days. We sent messages in your own languages. We showed you our capabilities. We offered every possible warning short of actually firing at you. And when you sent warships to establish peacekeeping positions in our territory, we responded. Those deaths are tragic, but they were not unprovoked. Admiral Chorus nodded slowly. She's right. I ordered those ships forward. I thought they humans were bluffing. I was wrong. Those deaths are my responsibility, not theirs. The chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives argued that human actions were justified. Others claimed they were excessive. Sarah waited for the noise to die down. Finally, Vaughn raised his hand for silence. Dr. Chen, the council acknowledges that we may have made mistakes in our approach to the Sol system, but we must discuss the legal situation. Council law states that 10,000 years of absence constitutes abandonment. We have settlements, trade agreements, an established presence. You cannot simply erase 4,000 years of legal framework. Sarah leaned forward. You're right. We can't erase your laws, but we also don't have to follow them. We were never part of your council. We never agreed to your legal frameworks. You created laws that applied to our home without our consent. That's not legitimacy. That's colonialism. The word hung in the air. Colonialism for many species, it carried historical weight. They had been victims of it themselves. In their distant past, Vesa spoke up unexpectedly. If I may, council leader, my grandmother studied extinct species. She always said the most dangerous species weren't the ones that fought constantly. It was the ones that fought only when necessary, because they understood exactly how much damage they could do. She looked at Sarah. Humans created weapons capable of destroying their own planet. Then they made treaties to never use them. They understood mutually assured destruction before they even left their solar system. They're not aggressive by nature. They're terrified of what they can do. So they overcompensate with overwhelming defensive responses to end conflicts immediately. Sarah nodded. That's accurate. We know what war costs. We've studied it extensively. We've lived through world wars, genocides, and near-extinction events. We understand violence in ways that most species never will. That's why we try so hard to avoid it, and that's why we're so dangerous when we're forced into it. Thresh added his perspective. I've spent 40 years studying human culture. Everything Vesa said is true. But there's more. Humans are builders. They're explorers. They're cooperators. Their entire history is about competing groups eventually finding ways to work together. They want peace, but they'll fight to the death to protect what they love. The conversation shifted. Representatives began asking about human technology, culture, and intentions. Sarah answered honestly, yes. Humanity had advanced weapons. Yes, they would defend their territory. Absolutely. But they also wanted trade, knowledge, exchange, and eventually friendship with other species. We're not conquerors. Sarah said firmly, we don't want your systems, we don't want your resources. We just want our home and we want respect. Treat us as equals, honor our boundaries, and we'll be your allies. Violate our space, threaten our people, and you'll face the same response as those three warships. Vaughn looked at his fellow representatives. He could see the calculation in their eyes. Humanity was powerful, but they were just one species. The council represented thousands. A war would be devastating for both sides, but more importantly, humanity wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. They wanted their home system. They wanted recognition. They wanted to be left alone unless invited otherwise. These were terms the council could accept. Dr. Chen Vaughn said carefully. The council proposes the following. We formally recognize the Sol system as human sovereign territory. We withdraw all claims and settlements. In exchange, humanity agrees to establish diplomatic relations, open trade negotiations, and share defensive technology with Council military forces. Sarah shook her head. We in LT, UNC, and GT, LL withdraw the weapons sharing. We'll open diplomatic relations and trade, but we won't share our military technology. Not yet. Maybe in a few decades after trust is established. But not now. You don't trust us, Vor said quietly. Would you? Sarah replied. You spent millennia occupying our home. You ignored our warnings. You only left when we forced you out. Trust is earned. Council leader, you'll need to prove you respect us before we share our most sensitive technology. The negotiations continued for hours. Eventually, they reached agreement. The Sol system would be recognized as human territory. All alien settlements would be removed within 90 days. In exchange, humanity would establish embassies on major council worlds, open trade routes, and share scientific knowledge in non-military fields. As the meeting concluded, Thresh approached Sarah privately. What will you do now? The galaxy knows you exist. Some will fear you, some will want your technology, some will challenge you. Sarah smiled tiredly. We'll do what we've always done. We'll try to be peaceful. We'll extend hands of friendship to those who respect us. We'll trade, share knowledge, and cooperate with those who prove trustworthy. She paused. But we'll also keep our weapons ready. Our defenses strong and our warnings clear. You asked what we'll do when we hear threats. We'll respond with overwhelming force. We'll protect our home absolutely, and we'll never ever let anyone forget that we're here to stay. Vesa joined them. The galaxy is updating its databases. Humanity is no longer listed as extinct or primitive. The new designation is protected status. Extreme caution. Do not provoke. Is that acceptable? Sarah laughed. It's honest. I'll take it. As Sarah's shuttle returned to Earth, she looked at the planet below. Blue and green and beautiful home. They had fought for it. They had slept for it, and now they had reclaimed it. On Earth's surface, humans were stepping outside for the first time in 10,000 years. They breathed fresh air. They felt sunlight. They walked on ground their ancestors had fought to preserve. And above them, the last alien vessels were departing, leaving the Sol system empty of foreign presence. Admiral Kim stood beside Governor Tanaka, watching the evacuations complete. Do you think they'll respect the boundaries? Yuki considered. Most will, some won't, and we'll deal with those when the time comes. But we've made our position Clear, this is our home. These are our rules, and we're willing to enforce them across the galaxy. Species were learning humanity's story. A species that survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near extinction. A species that went asleep, surrounded by weapons, and woke up ready to use them. A species that desperately wanted peace but was frighteningly good at war. Vesa filed her official report to the Karathi government. She wrote, "I have witnessed the return of humanity to the galactic stage. They are not conquerors, they are not pacifists, they are guardians who slept for 10,000 years and woke to find strangers in their home. The galaxy would do well to remember this lesson. The most dangerous species aren't the ones who threaten loudly, they're the ones who warn once, then act decisively. Humanity has warned us, let us be wise enough to listen." Report concluded with her grandmother's old saying, now proven prophetically true: never trust a species' defenses to stay quiet forever. If they built it to last, they meant to come back, and when they do, pray you weren't the one who ignored their warnings. Humanity was awake. The galaxy had forgotten what sleeping guardians could do. Now it would never forget.